according to our Christy Haynes. Also, Adrian Wojnarowski reporting that Kawhi prefers to go to Los Angeles, preferably the Lakers. This comes after months of contentiousness between Leonard and the Spurs surrounding the handling of Kawhi's quad injury, which kept him out all but 9 games this past season, forcing us to miss so many plays like this.
Once he comes back, if he's able to play at that level,
he's one of the top 3 players in the league.
Kawhi Leonard moving into superstar status.
I am a superstar.
Kawhi with the finish. Kawhi Leonard is easily one of the very best defenders in this league.
Blocked by Leonard. Oh, what defense!
Nobody has what this guy has in terms of checking all the boxes.
It just seems he can do everything. He is a two-way player extraordinaire.
What a play by Kawhi Leonard.
Very few best players in the league that play both ends. I think that's what makes him special, that he does so well at both ends of the floor.
Who, what, where, when, and Kawhi.
I am a superstar.
He's still a young guy. He has a long career ahead of him.
ESPN NBA insider Brian Windhorst joins me now. And Brian, listen, according to Woj, Kawhi prefers the Lakers. How do you think this will play out for the Spurs?
Well, this is Kawhi's attempt to make a leverage trade, saying, trade me somewhere where I want to go because I have a contract decision and I will be able to control my future. But, Sage, I'm not so sure that that's going to be able to happen because as I look around the league and look at Boston and I look at Philadelphia and even look at Sacramento, which may be willing to dangle the number 2 overall pick, I don't think that the Lakers can make a competitive offer. And this is something to understand, Sage. Kawhi Leonard, even if he intends to, cannot sign an extension with his new team immediately when he gets there. The earliest he could sign is 6 months after. So there would be a threat here and a risk of making a trade for Kawhi Leonard when you were just renting him. And that's going to make it very difficult for the Lakers to get an edge in this trade. And that's why I think while Kawhi may want Los Angeles, the Spurs may have better options. And frankly, they have no incentive to acquiesce to what Kawhi wants.
Wow, there's a lot there, Brian. And then the next question about LeBron James and the Kawhi situation, how that will affect him. I mean, we're taking a look now at all the potential landing spots for the teams that are linked to LeBron. So how does today's news affect LeBron's free agency decision? Or maybe do we have to wait until we know exactly where Kawhi's going?
Well, I've been convinced for months that Kawhi and LeBron are connected. Where Kawhi goes will affect LeBron. Not necessarily that they would be teammates with each other, but he could block options that LeBron would have. For example, let's say Philadelphia trades for Kawhi Leonard. That door may close for LeBron. But one thing I can tell you, I've got to believe that LeBron James and Kawhi Leonard are in touch during this process. And Paul George. This is the time of the year when free agents and potential guys that can get traded do business with each other. So my guess is if they haven't been talking, they will be talking to see if there's a way that they can match up or a way they can stay apart.
Doesn't this sound eerily familiar to what we were talking about 8 years ago and the conversations between Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade and LeBron James? People hated it then, but is it just now a way of life in the NBA?
Yeah, that changed everything in the NBA. That changed modern NBA player transactional movements. And, Sage, just about every summer we've seen massive movement in star players. Guess what? We're going to see massive movement again. And I know that a lot of people are assuming that these guys are all going to end up with the Lakers together. I think that's a long shot at this point.
Okay, we're going to have a very interesting 2 weeks here as we watch how this all plays out. Brian Windhorst with the latest. Thank you.
Kawhi is one of only three players to win the Defensive Player of the Year and the Finals MVP in his NBA career. The other two, first ballot Hall of Famers, Hakeem and Michael. You can go by first name basis right there, as we do with Kawhi, as he's one of 10 players to win multiple Defensive Player of the Year awards. Much more on this story. Spurs reporter Michael C. Wright joining us now on SportsCenter. Michael, you've been in contact with the Spurs. What's been their reaction to this story this afternoon?
Well, Kevin, I hit up the Spurs like within a minute of this news breaking because obviously it's sort of a blockbuster type of story. But I hit them up immediately, and I was told that, hey, neither Kawhi or his people have said anything to us about wanting a trade. So there's a little bit of a communications gap there, which has always been the case throughout this whole scenario when Kawhi first got injured. And, to me, that is the root of this whole issue. But as of right now, they haven't told the Spurs, but the Spurs, I think, were prepared for that. I will say that I talked to a high-ranking source 2 days ago, and they were very optimistic that the Spurs, that they'd be able to bring back Kawhi. As a matter of fact, I was told that Kawhi and Pop both have been in contact periodically throughout this offseason. And not only that, they both reached out to one another. I know Kawhi was at a celebration for Pop's wife, Aaron Popovich. Normal. So I think they were a little bit blindsided by this latest news.
Now, let's talk about the future of Pop here, because a year ago he had some issues with LaMarcus Aldridge. They smoothed that out. He's had the tragedy with, of course, you mentioning his wife passing away during the playoffs. How much does all of this affect Pop's future with the Spurs?
That's a really good question. I will say this. I've been told that this is the least amount of exposure that the Spurs have actually had to Greg Popovich this offseason in a long time. But I will also say that he's also been engaged with the team. He's talked to the guys. As you know, the Spurs have had a little bit of turnover on the coaching staff, and Pop has been on that phone, congratulating guys and wishing them well. And he's been trying to, make sure that the Spurs are in the right place to get the replacement coaches that they might. Those, openings fully come to fruition. So he's definitely in touch with the team, in touch with all the guys, but he's just not been as engaged as usual.
Okay, we'll see.
So I think he'll be back at least for next season.
All right, we'll see how this story plays out on both sides with the future. Michael C. Wright covering the Spurs.
So many more questions surrounding this, too. I mean, you can say you want to go to a certain team, but do those teams actually have the ability to pay him, to work the trade?
Listen, I do this with ease to make them believe. I make them believe. Here's what they say in the streets. I got what they need. I got what they need. That's facts. I know you can't match that. I live on the fast track. We're making the impact and keeping it intact.
Our top story here on SportsCenter today, the report that Kawhi Leonard, one of the biggest stars in the NBA, wants out of San Antonio. This according to our Chris B. Haynes. And also, Kawhi reportedly, according to Adrian Wojnarowski, prefers to go to Los Angeles, preferably the Lakers. This comes after months of contentiousness between Leonard and the Spurs surrounding the handling of Kawhi's quad injury, which kept him out of all but 9 games this past season. And here is Chris Haynes a couple hours after breaking the story. Chris, Kawhi, Greg Popovich still have not met face-to-face this offseason. So why is this news coming out now?
Well, look, the Kawhi's camp has always been I felt like they have been slighted by the Spurs all season long. They felt like there's a level of distrust there with the way his quad injury has been handled and the narrative surrounding that injury. And so leading up to the draft, we all know that's when trades start circulating. That's when things start forming. And Kawhi has yet to sit down and have a meeting with the Spurs brass. And I was told that the Spurs wanted that to happen, but it probably wanted that to happen with just Kawhi. And that's just not going to play right now. So I think all these factors led to the point to where Kawhi has basically felt like he's had enough and he wants to get out of San Antonio. And that's what I reported this morning.
When you say just Kawhi, you mean without agents, without family members?
Correct. Without agents, without his agent, without family members. The Spurs will like to deal with this with just Kawhi. Okay. But I think from Kawhi's camp, they felt like it hasn't just been Kawhi. It's been the whole camp. That's been the level of scrutiny has been going towards all of them. And they wanted to have if they were going to have a meeting, they wanted to have this together. Okay. And I think that both sides couldn't agree to make that happen. I think that's what led to where we are now.
So here's the thing. One of many interesting things, the Spurs are the only team that can offer Kawhi the Supermax contract. Why leave that much money on the table, which is over $30 million, right?
Yeah, and I think a lot of people felt like Kawhi Leonard, he's a businessman first and foremost, and a basketball player, but they felt like he would be crazy to leave over $30 million on the table. But the level of distrust that Kawhi feels that the organization placed upon him and the way he handled his injury in this situation, he felt like he just wants to be in a situation where he trusts the organization, trusts that they have his best interest in mind. and he's willing to let go of that money to go out to greater pastures. Now, look, I think something can still be amended here. Obviously, it's going to take those two to come to terms and come together on that. But as of right now, Kawhi feels like he's better suited being somewhere else. And he's not even thinking about the money right now. And that's a huge problem because remember, the Spurs don't deal with problems like this. But already 2 years in a row, LaMarcus requested trade last summer. And now we have Kawhi. So things have definitely changed in Spurs land.
Yeah, LaMarcus and Pop worked that out. Things are good with them. But now this, and remember, Greg Popovich, the loss of his wife just 2 months ago. So very tough times personally as well for Greg Popovich. Chris Haynes, great stuff today. Thank you. Kevin?
Well, Kawhi established himself as one of the best players in the game in the 2014 NBA Finals stage. He was named MVP of that series at age 22, shot over 61% from the floor. Leonard has turned into one of the best defensive players in the game. How about Defensive Player of the Year in both 2016 and 2017, finishing the top 3 in MVP voting both years. Two-way player. Also has improved in scoring average each of his first 6 seasons. First, in his last full season, he averaged over 25 points per game. And that year, he led the Spurs to the Western Conference Finals. He had dropped 26 points in 24 minutes in Game 1 against the Warriors. However, he sprained his ankle in that game, and the Spurs were swept. It's great to have Michael Wilbon with us. And Michael, 2 years ago, Kawhi was the perfect Spur, one of the 3 best players in the NBA. Now we're here. What's your reaction to that he wants out of San Antonio?
Well, Kevin, my first reaction is this is unbelievably short-sighted. And he's getting some advice I wouldn't trust in a million years. In the Spurs, you're talking about the most stable NBA organization over the last 20 years in all probability. I mean, from David Robinson to Tim Duncan to Kawhi Leonard and all the people around him to have R.C. Buford and Greg Popovich there. And all throughout his arrival, his maturation, from a guy people didn't expect much of to an NBA Finals MVP. You've got Ginobili and Parker and just a cast that is so stable. And because somebody gets in your ear and tells you you can't trust them anymore, it just seems to me to be, I don't know, it seems to be a sort of a sad day. Not for the Spurs necessarily. I think the Spurs will find a way to recover. But Kawhi Leonard, maybe he'll recover if he gets traded to one of those teams that's also stable and has a history of winning. If he gets his wish and he goes to the Lakers, if perhaps he winds up on the Celtics. But if I'm the San Antonio Spurs, I'm only worried about the deal I get back, not what his wishes might be.
Okay, when it comes to fit and personnel, what would be the perfect destination for Kawhi?
Well, I don't know about perfect, but I mean, there's some destinations and where it could work out. Obviously, we've heard the talk about the Lakers. If I'm the Spurs, I got to get Brandon Ingram back for starters and maybe Kuzma. I mean, I'm not just going to let Kawhi Leonard join your team because he wants out when he's under contract. That's not going to happen. So the Lakers would seem to be a good fit then, particularly if they can still successfully pursue LeBron James, and or Paul George. So, I mean, that's got a lot of upside to it. And the Celtics have so many assets, Kevin. You can do the same thing with playing that game. What do I have to have in return? And we know that Kyrie Irving's name would come up. He wouldn't be the only thing given his injury history, but he would be one of the pieces I'd be asking back.
Okay, and then what impact could this have on LeBron's decision in your mind with where Kawhi goes?
Well, I mean, if you conduct a trade and you think you have Kawhi Leonard coming to the Lakers and LeBron James looks there and sees he gets to play with Kawhi, now you're talking about the kind of personnel that you feel you can look eye to eye with the Golden State Warriors next year. I mean, we know Kawhi Leonard is not scared of the Golden State Warriors. Last time he played against them, he had a 25-point lead in Oakland in Game 1 of a Western Conference Final. So that, to me, would seem to have put a little extra pop in LeBron James' step if he was serious about joining the Lakers as a free agent.
It could be the first big domino in a very, very fun offseason ahead. Michael Wilbon on the biggest story of the day with Kawhi Leonard. Check this out. The Lakers won only 35 games last season, but after the news about Kawhi today, their odds are now 6-1 to win the NBA title next season. Only the Warriors, the Rockets, the Sixers, and Celtics have better odds to win the title next year. Meanwhile, the Spurs odds have doubled from 25-1 to 50-1 since the end of the season. Days like this is why we love our job.
Oh, my.
Much more Ronaldo's magic coming up. But first, the big NBA story all day. Kawhi Leonard wants out in San Antonio.
Yeah. Not only does he want out, but the Los Angeles Lakers, apparently that team is his preferred destination. Yes, a developing story here on Sports. And let's begin with the report that Chris B. Haynes was first to put out that Leonard does want out. It comes after a tumultuous season in which the NBA's two-time Defensive Player of the Year only played 9 games because of a quad injury. The Spurs' handling of that injury is what's at the heart of the issue for Kawhi. The team reportedly did not like the fact he got a second opinion on the quad. A source also tells ESPN that Kawhi has not officially asked for a trade. Here's what all of this could mean for Kawhi. If he is traded, he would no longer be eligible for a super max deal. That means his new max contract would be a total of $31 million less than it would be if he signs with San Antonio this offseason. Remember, Kawhi can also opt out of his current deal 1 year from now. That would be at the end of the 2018-2019 season. Adrian Wojnarowski joins me now live. Adrian, the other day you had doubts that the relationship between Kawhi and the Spurs could be repaired, and that face-to-face meeting between Kawhi and head coach Greg Popovich still has not happened. Woj, at this point, what, if anything, can the Spurs do to salvage this relationship?
Well, Sage, the Spurs had wanted to talk directly to Kawhi Leonard. Greg Popovich had worked with him on trying to set up a meeting. That meeting hadn't happened. I was told in the last couple days that Leonard was trying to buy some time before sitting down with Popovich, and then was thinking of maybe just talking to him on the phone. But that reporting today, Chris's reporting, blindsided the Spurs. They had not been told this by Kawhi Leonard or his camp. In fact, there had been a sense around the organization that they wanted to get that $219 million Supermax offer. So San Antonio would like to speak with Kawhi Leonard and see if there's a way to move forward here. There are some who wonder, is this just a negotiating tactic, or is Kawhi Leonard absolutely set on being traded? Those are questions San Antonio and some other teams around the league right now would like to get some answers to.
And then you're reporting that he wants to actually go to Los Angeles. That'd be his preference, preferably to the Lakers, right? But that does not mean, Woj, that he'll actually end up there, correct?
That's right. And Los Angeles, the Lakers, and the Clippers, and around Kawhi Leonard and his group over the last weeks, months, there's been a lot of indecision, a lot of changing of minds of what exactly it is they would like to do. So it remains fluid because of the chance to go to L.A. LeBron James potentially headed there in free agency, or a Paul George. That appeal, on one day I'm told that appeals to Leonard, and then there are times he thinks, maybe I don't want that spotlight. He hasn't liked the coverage of this story and having the attention on him. Well, you're going to get that times a lot in L.A., and that makes the Clippers at times more intriguing to him. And so this story may keep evolving, and there are plenty of other teams who'd like to get involved in trade talks with the Spurs.
And we'll talk a little bit more about those teams coming up here in SportsCenter. But, with this, there's a lot of dominoes that are going to fall based on what Kawhi does, including, you mentioned him, LeBron James. How specifically could this affect LeBron, Woj?
Well, listen, LeBron wants to play with great players. He said, I want to play with high IQ guys, and certainly that's Kawhi Leonard. This is a MVP caliber player in the league. It is a difficult pathway for Kawhi to get to the Lakers before his free agency in 2019. The Spurs are not going to be inclined, they're not going to be enthusiastic about doing a deal with the Lakers. The pieces with the Lakers don't fit. Watch for Boston. If the Spurs do a deal, if they get to that point, Boston has the assets and the interest in Kawhi Leonard to maybe do the kind of deal that would make more sense for the Spurs, young players, and draft picks.
You said earlier in the week that Boston inquired about this possible trade back at the deadline in February, but the Spurs said no thank you. So now we shall see if he ends up there after all. Thank you, Adrian. Much more on Kawhi Leonard coming up. But first, let's take a look back at how all of this began.
Kawhi Leonard dealing with an injured thigh that will keep him out of the preseason.
He's had quad injuries dating back to spring of 2016. That is worrisome.
Kawhi Leonard out for the season opener.
Look at Leonard, difficulty just making up the stairs of the team playing.
Really.
Still no timetable for his return.
My hope is that this is classic Spurs caution.
Missed the first 27 regular season games.
Taking my time so I could be healthy down the road.
looked just fine there. Oh, it's great to have him back.
Kawhi Leonard has a partial tear in his left shoulder.
He played 9 games, and he didn't really seem right.
Kawhi Leonard, he's out indefinitely.
Horrible situation. Yeah, it's bad.
Kawhi Leonard and the Spurs now have a strained relationship.
The team held a players-only meeting. His own teammates said, come play with us. Kawhi Leonard has told them, I've got good reason why I haven't played.
For me, he's not coming back because he's not healthy.
He's up for the super max. There's a lot of money on the line this summer. There may be a chance that Kawhi played his last game with the Spurs.
Can you repair the relationship and keep Kawhi, or is he going to have to move him?
Still more to come on Kawhi. We're hearing L.A. is where he wants to go. Michael Wilbon on what should be the top destination for the two-time Defensive Player of the Year.
For a long time. I'm going to get better with age. I know it's going to be a good one.
I know what I'm doing has not been done a lot. Probably one of the best plays I've had in my career.
You know, it's hard to believe that it's been 8 years since the decision, and since then LeBron James has been to the NBA Finals every single season. But now that the 2018 season is over and LeBron deals with his 6th NBA Finals loss, here we go again. But boy, free agency feels very different this year than it did in 2010, doesn't it? I mean, this time LeBron has 3 championship rings on his resume, and this time you could argue that his options aren't quite as appealing as they were in that summer of 2010. Here's Michael Wilbon.
The Boston Celtics with the huge upset. And Cleveland fans wondering if that's the last time he'll take off a Cavalier jersey.
This fall, I'm going to take my talents to South Beach and join the Miami Heat.
The first time made perfect sense. He was tired of getting close with nothing to show. 2 in their prime All-Stars and a Hall of Fame boss beckoning in South Beach.
Not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5.
The second time the decision to move was probably just as clear for him to see. Going back home to deliver a championship to the title-starved place he always held dear.
Cleveland is a city of champions once again.
But now, no destination is entirely clear. No situation appears to fit perfectly. LeBron James can become a free agent on July 1st, and the choices are all attractive but not nearly as convincing as the first 2 times around, providing a new and different twist for where will LeBron land.
I don't think anybody would be shocked if he does leave.
I have yet to see an option that makes me go, he's out of it.
I don't think LeBron knows where he's going right now.
No team he joins would be the automatic favorite Miami was in 2010. Houston?
It's not just to have James Harden. It's not just enough to have Chris Paul.
If you put LeBron James on Houston, he certainly has an excellent chance to win the championship.
Creative as Coach Mike D'Antoni is, would it really work to have on one team 3 men, each of whom needs and deserves to be the primary ball handler? Philly?
I just can't come up with a better fit than the 76ers.
If you cannot figure out a way to make LeBron James, Joel Embiid, and Ben Simmons the best team in the East, you're making some mistake.
Do the 76ers really want to turn their phenom Ben Simmons, perhaps a young Magic in the making, into an off-the-ball voyeur, a spot-up shooter who hasn't yet learned to shoot? Maybe LeBron won't go anywhere. Maybe the move is to not move, to stay right at home in Cleveland and play with a Cavaliers team strengthened by the number 8 overall pick. If he's going to drop a free agent bomb that will blow up Twitter and really dazzle the league, there's only one place for LeBron James to go: Los Angeles.
I could see why he'd want to play in L.A.
They have little obstacles to create that path.
The Lakers. In a lineup with Brandon Ingram, Kyle Kuzma, and Lonzo Ball, LeBron James would immediately be surrounded by a more talented ensemble than the one he led this year to the finals.
LeBron James having to shoulder a big burden.
That roster will be restricted how they improve.
Take it one logical step further. Put LeBron in the lineup with Ingram, Kuzma, Ball, and Paul George, and the Lakers would be a serious threat to anybody, Rockets and Warriors included. And LeBron would have in Lakers boss Magic Johnson the wise older basketball brother he's never had. No matter the scenario, for the 3rd time in 8 years, LeBron's postseason decision will be nearly as suspenseful as anything that happens during it. He's been the most important and fascinating player the sport has seen since Shaq and Kobe, maybe since Michael Jordan left the Bulls 20 years ago. But this decision is harder than the first 2 many think, more complex and nuanced, requiring the thinking and planning of a husband and father,
I've already exceeded everything that I've ever dreamed about. At this point, I'm just adding crazy toppings on the cake.
A man plotting for the first time more about the end of his career than the beginning.